Star Trek, Primitive Passenger Season 2, Episode 7, The Deal. The starship Vigilant dropped out of warp, its sleek form gliding to a halt against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. On the bridge, Captain James Sterling stood, hands clasped behind his back, his steely gaze fixed on the view screen. Outpost Alpha hung in the distance, a lonely sentinel on the edge of known space. "Status report," Sterling barked, his voice carrying the weight of years spent in pursuit of a singular goal. First Officer Angela Sax looked up from her console, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight regulation bun. "We've arrived at the coordinates, sir. Outpost Alpha is hailing us." Sterling nodded curtly. On screen, the face of a harried-looking Tellarite appeared before them. "Vigilant, this is Outpost Alpha. We weren't expecting a Starfleet vessel in this sector. What brings you to our humble corner of the galaxy?" "Official business," Sterling replied, his tone brooking no argument. "We're in pursuit of a fugitive. I need all logs of ships that have docked or traded with your outpost in the last solar month." The Tellarite's expression soured. "This is neutral space, Captain. We're not obligated to. You'll find that Starfleet's jurisdiction extends to the protection of Federation interests, wherever they may be," Sterling cut him off. "The logs, if you please." As the communication ended, Sax turned to her captain, her brow furrowed. "Sir, if I may speak freely." Sterling's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Go ahead, Commander." "Our mission parameters were to patrol the border regions and gather intelligence on potential threats to the Federation. This fixation on Mercer, it's taking us far beyond our assigned duties." Sterling's eyes flashed. "Mercer is a threat, Sax. His technology, in the wrong hands, could destabilize the entire quadrant. We have a duty to bring him in." Sax opened her mouth to respond, but was cut off by the tactical officer's urgent call. "Captain, multiple ships dropping out of warp. Breen signatures." Sterling's head snapped toward the view screen. 3 Breen warships shot into view, their sleek utilitarian forms bristling with weaponry. "Red alert," Sterling commanded, his voice steady despite the sudden tension gripping the bridge. "Shields up. Tactical. Arm phasers and photon torpedoes." As the Vigilant's crew scrambled to battle stations, Sterling couldn't help but wonder if this was another of Mercer's elaborate schemes. But as the first volley of Breen fire rocked the ship, he realized that they had stumbled into something far more dangerous than a game of cat and mouse. The hunt for Nolan Mercer would have to wait. Survival was now their primary concern. "Afaev." The Vigilant lurched to starboard as Sterling barked orders, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "Evasive pattern, Delta. Return fire." Phaser beams lanced out, scoring hits against the lead Breen vessel's shields. A spread of photon torpedoes followed, detonating in a brilliant flash that momentarily lit up the view screen. "Direct hit on the lead ship," the tactical officer reported. "Their shields are down to 60%. Sterling allowed himself a grim smile. "Press the attack. Focus fire on." His words were cut short as the ship rocked violently. Consoles sparked, and crew members were thrown from their stations. "Report," Sterling demanded, steadying himself against the sudden list of the deck. Sax's fingers flew over her console. "Multiple hits, sir. Shields are failing. That last volley was some kind of energy weapon I've never seen before." As if to punctuate her words, another blast struck the Vigilant. The lights flickered and died, plunging the bridge into darkness before emergency power kicked in. "Engineering reports complete power failure," Sax called out, her voice tight with tension. "We're dead in space, sir." Sterling's mind raced, searching for options as the Breen ships circled their helpless prey. "Get me weapons, shields, anything." But as the seconds ticked by and systems remained offline, the grim reality of their situation set in. Sterling watched, helpless, as the Breen vessels moved in for the kill. In that moment of desperation, Sax made her decision. Fingers trembling slightly, she reached into her uniform and pulled out the small communicator Nolan had given her. Taking a deep breath, she activated it. "Alara, this is Angela Sax. We need help. Groton." Millions of light years away, aboard the Havoc, Nolan Mercer was just settling into his chair, the adrenaline of his recent encounter with the Zelaxians still coursing through his veins. The view screen before him showed the battered Zelaxian homeworld, a grim reminder of the power at his command. Ilara's voice cut through his contemplation. "Nolan, we're receiving a distress call. It's from Angela Sax." Nolan's eyes widened. Without hesitation, he commanded, "Plot a course and blink." In a heartbeat, the Havoc vanished from Zelaxian space. When it reappeared, the massive ship cast a shadow over the Breen vessels, its mere presence altering the dynamics of the battle in an instant. On the darkened bridge of the Vigilant, emergency lights cast an eerie red glow over the faces of the crew. Guilty. Commander Sax, her eyes glued to the flickering tactical display, suddenly straightened. "Sir," she called out, her voice tight with a mix of relief and apprehension, "the Breen ships are altering course. We're no longer target-locked." Captain Sterling, his face etched with lines of concern, turned toward her. "What's happening, Commander?" Sax's eyes widened as she processed the information before her. "It's the Havoc, sir, off our port bow. The Breen are opening fire." Outside, the void of space erupted into a dazzling spectacle of destruction. The Breen ships, their weapons still glowing hot from the assault on the Vigilant, unleashed a furious barrage against the Havoc. Sickly green energy beams lanced out, accompanied by pulsing orange projectiles that left shimmering trails in their wake. The attacks converged on the Havoc, its massive hull illuminated by the onslaught. For a moment, it seemed as if the gargantuan ship might buckle under the assault. But as the Breen fire dissipated against its shields, the Havoc stood unscathed, a testament to its advanced technology. Then, with a response that could only be described as devastating, the Havoc retaliated. A symphony of weaponry unlike anything the Vigilant's crew had ever witnessed sprang to life across the Havoc's hull. Brilliant red phaser beams sliced through space, accompanied by the eerie blue glow of disruptor fire. But it was the high-yield particle weapon that truly stole the show, a pulsing, iridescent beam that seemed to distort the very fabric of space-time as it lanced toward its target. The lead Breen ship, caught in the crosshairs of this technological marvel, stood no chance. The particle beam struck its hull, and for a split second the ship seemed to implode, its structure collapsing in on itself. Then, in a blinding flash that forced the Vigilant's crew to shield their eyes, it exploded outward, scattering debris across the starscape. As the light from the explosion faded, the remaining Breen ships hung motionless, as if stunned by the display of power they had just witnessed. Aboard the Vigilant, the crew watched in awe as a familiar shimmer of transporters enveloped the debris field where the destroyed Breen ship had been. Sax's console beeped, drawing her attention. "Sir," she reported, her voice hushed with disbelief, "Mercer's. He's transporting survivors. He's moving them all to one of the damaged Breen vessels." Sterling's brow furrowed, his tactical mind trying to make sense of Mercer's actions. Before he could respond, they watched as the Breen survivor's ship slowly turned away, limping off at high impulse, its warp drive clearly offline. As the Breen retreated, the massive form of the Havoc loomed ever larger in the Vigilant's view screen, a silent reminder of the power Nolan Mercer wielded and the complex nature of the man they had been pursuing for so long. Meanwhile, the bridge of the Havoc erupted into chaos as the Breen ships unleashed their barrage. Nolan Mercer gripped his command chair, his knuckles white as the massive ship shuddered under the assault, his eyes darting between multiple flickering displays. Ilara's voice, usually calm and collected, carried a note of urgency. "Shields at 37% and dropping rapidly. We've lost primary power to propulsion. ALL weapon systems are ready and waiting." Nolan's fingers flew across his console, rerouting power from non-essential systems. "Divert all available power to the shields." We need to weather this storm." Another volley rocked the ship, sending sparks cascading from overloaded circuits. The acrid smell of burnt electronics filled the air. "Nolan, backup systems are failing. We're risking structural integrity on the inner hull." Gritting his teeth, Nolan made a snap decision. "Use the emergency capacitors to bolster the shields. We just need to hold out a little longer." "But that'll leave us without," Ilara began. "God damn it," Nolan roared. As Ilara complied, the shuddering of the ship lessened slightly. Nolan allowed himself a moment of relief before turning his attention to the next crisis. A nearby console exploded in a shower of sparks, filling the bridge with smoke. Nolan didn't flinch, his focus absolute as he worked to keep his ship together. "Ilara, what's the status of the Lost?" he asked, an idea forming. "The Lost is undamaged and fully operational, Nolan. It's shielded within the Havoc's hull." Nolan nodded, a plan crystallizing. "Good. I'll transport over before broadcast." "Nolan, you can't be serious," Ilara protested. "The Havoc needs you here." "The Havoc is a blazing mess of sparks and shrapnel," Nolan countered, already launching a counterattack he hoped would be 100 times more dazzling. "We can't let Sterling or the Breen see how much damage we've taken. I'll conduct negotiations from the Lost. You focus on keeping us in one piece. Oh, and transport the Breen survivors, blah, blah, blah." As the transporter beam engulfed him, Nolan caught one last glimpse of his battered bridge. As the transporter beam faded, Nolan found himself in the pristine interior of the Lost. The sudden silence was almost deafening after the chaos of the Havoc's bridge. Taking a deep breath, he straightened his jacket, brushed some dust off his sleeve, and moved to the communications console. As Nolan leaned back in his chair, again composing himself, he tried to map ahead a few moves. Let's see if he'd guessed right. He and ace up his sleeve he'd been waiting to play. The Breen ship he'd repaired and studied months ago sat ready in the Havoc's cavernous hold. "Captain Sterling," Nolan began, his voice smooth as silk, "I'm offering you a fully functional, brand-spanking new Breen warship, complete with a complement of those energy weapons that took you down so easily." Sterling's eyebrows shot up. "What's the catch, Mercer?" Nolan allowed himself a small, knowing smile. There was always a catch, but not the one Sterling was expecting. "No catch, Captain. I'll transport that ship directly to McKinley Shipyard. Is it still there?" He allowed himself the quip. "It'll be ready for your people to launch a bonanza of deconstructing and reverse engineering that will advance Federation technology with tools the Klingons and the Romulans don't yet have an answer for." As he spoke, Nolan's mind flashed to the countless hours he'd spent studying the Breen vessel, extracting its secrets. He'd give Starfleet a tantalizing taste of advanced technology, but nothing that could truly threaten his own position. "And," Nolan continued, "I'll transport you, your crew, and what's left of your ship safely to McKinley as well." He watched Sterling's face carefully, noting the barely perceptible twitch in the captain's jaw. Nolan knew what Sterling wanted, the prestige, the admiralty bars that had eluded him for so long. This Breen ship was the key to all of that, a prize that would catapult Sterling into the upper echelons of Starfleet. "That's quite an offer, Mercer," Sterling said cautiously. "But why? What do you get out of this?" Nolan's expression softened, masking the calculations behind his eyes. "Let's just say I'm tired of this dance, Captain. You chasing me across the quadrant, both of us wasting resources that could be better spent elsewhere." He paused, his gaze drifting to Angela for a moment. "Consider it a gesture of goodwill, a chance for both of us to move on to more pressing matters." What Nolan didn't say was how this move would free him from Sterling's relentless pursuit. With such a technological windfall, Sterling would be too busy basking in accolades and promotions to bother chasing after Nolan. And the Federation, while gaining impressive technology, would only gain a minor advantage in the overall scheme of things. As Sterling mulled over the offer, Nolan's mind was already tracing the next steps ahead. The damaged Breen ship from this battle would be repaired, ready a different adventure. Ilara wouldn't mind rebuilding another Breen ship, Well, maybe Nolan wouldn't tell her about it right away. He noticed some flickering coming from toward the bridge. "All right, Mercer," Sterling finally said. "We accept your offer." Nolan shook himself awake, satisfaction coursing through him. This was more than just resolving a long-standing chase. It was setting the stage for his future plans, free from Starfleet interference. Maybe an admiral in his pocket if need be. As the details were hammered out, Nolan caught Angela's eye one last time. In that brief moment, he allowed himself to wonder if she saw through his maneuvering, if she understood the layers of strategy at play. But that was a question for another time. For now, Nolan Mercer had once again reshaped the game to his advantage, turning a potential threat into a stepping stone for his grand design. Epilogue. Angela Sax paced across the observation deck of Earth Station, her eyes shifting between the pristine Breen warship and the battered Federation vessel docked beside it. The two ships were stark contrasts. One a sleek, cutting-edge piece of alien technology, the other a testament to Starfleet's endurance and resilience. She let out a deep breath, crossing her arms as she felt the weight of the moment. "Nolan," her voice came through Mercer's comm badge with a warm sense of relief. "I wanted to let you know that your plan worked flawlessly, even though Sterling knew you set him up." She chuckled, shaking her head. "He jumped in with both feet. He's trying to parlay this into an admiral's paycheck, possibly even dean of Starfleet Academy." Nolan's voice crackled over the comm. "Great. They'll be churning out little Sterling stompers in no time." He couldn't resist adding a snide gesture as he stomped around the deck of the Maldor with his finger under his nose. Something Angela would never understand, but found hilarious all the same. Angela grinned at his antics, but her expression shifted slightly, a hint of something more personal coming through. "Nolan, I'm turning into the old maid of Starfleet," she laughed, running a hand through her hair. "I'll be 37 next week. No husband, no kids, just more pips." She pulled her collar, flashing the pips proudly but with a twinge of bittersweet humor. "It's not fair when you measure your men by how much joy they get out of a pork chop," she added with a smirk, remembering how Nolan had devoured plate after plate of meat back on Earth Station. Her laughter bubbled up again, echoing in the small space. Nolan leaned back, the memory of that meal flashing in his mind. He'd savored every bite of those steaks, turkey dinners, and pork chops, dreaming of them for 60 long years in the depths of space. And he'd enjoyed them looking into her laughing blue eyes. He found himself lost in her blue eyes again. Before he could say anything meaningful, she added, her voice soft but playful, "I thought some mysterious man was supposed to show up out of nowhere and sweep me off my feet." Angela's voice lingered. "I didn't think he was supposed to just leave." Nolan's hand drifted over his comm badge, his heart racing for a moment. Without thinking, he tapped it. Within minutes, in a whirl of displaced air and a loud woof, Angela Sax appeared aboard the Maldor. She barely had time to say, "What the fuck was the—" before Nolan's arms wrapped around her in a tight embrace, the tension between them crushed in his arms.